Hello. Hey, my name is Kim, and I am an addict. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of this convention. We're all a part, but for allowing me to share. The topic is step one, moment of total recall. So I'm going to start out just by saying that I grew up in like a upper middle class family. There wasn't addiction in my family. There wasn't abuse, they were it was pretty straight-laced, not, ridiculously, but, and growing up, like, I was a parent's wet dream. Like, straight A student. I won poetry contests, drawing contests, cake decorating contests. I was in a class that was called PASS, Program for Academically Superior Students. I graduated in the top 5 of my class. Who's who of American high school students, the whole just, couldn't ask for much more. But I always felt different because of those things for a lot of reasons. I wasn't out there playing ball. I wasn't, getting in trouble. I wasn't just doing all the things that most kids were doing. And my family is, I'm sure, good intentioned as they meant to be. They would tell me, it's okay, you're special. Well, the last thing in the world I wanted to be was special. I wanted to be like everybody else. So in high school, that experimental stage, I started experimenting, and I didn't really care for a lot of it at first, but everybody else was doing it, and that helped me fit in. So I continued to do it until I did like it. And then I continued to do it a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. Addiction, cunning, powerful, baffling, that cunning part, oh my gosh, when I look back, it was like, I did one thing that I really didn't want to do, that I wasn't comfortable with doing. And I did it again, and I did it again until it was just part of my life. And it didn't bother me. I was comfortable with it. And about that time, something else would slide in. And, I wouldn't want to do it. I wasn't comfortable with it. I didn't like it until I did. And then some other little something would slide in. And, this went on for years. I just kept adding one more I will never got crossed off my list. Until, when I got here, my list of I will nevers was so short. It was ridiculous. And I guarantee you, had I kept on, all those would have been knocked off, and I probably would have found some other things to add to the list and knock off too. But that whole time, that all of this was going on, there was very, very few times that I was like, okay, I don't know about this. Because there was always somebody else that did more than I did, that acted more of a fool than I did, that didn't have this, but I had it. You know, all of these things, there was always somebody worse. And one of the reasons that is because I had quit hanging around anybody that had custody of their kids and had a car with a driver's license and current tags, and the windshield wipers worked, and they had food in their refrigerator, and the lights were always on, and the water was always on, and they took showers and wore clean clothes. Like, those people became like a memory. And in some ways, it wasn't even a memory. Like, they were like gone from my mind that people actually did that I actually did that at one time in my life. So as all of that continued and continued and continued, you know, there did end up being a couple of times where I was like, you know, I might need to slow down. I didn't really think about stopping. It was slow down. So I tried all those magic formulas, you know, only here, only this much, only this day, and only ended up being only the days that ended in Y. So I woke up one morning, and I had been on a 4-day run. I was supposed to make this short little run and go back to my son and his dad where I lived, and it ended up 4 days later. I woke up in the house, this older man's apartment, and he was an older black man, and he was like on disability and stuff. And me and the guys I was hanging out with the night before knew this was like July 2nd, and we knew he had just got his check. So we were out there, and his apartment was right next to a bar in the Bottoms. We were down in the Bottoms. That I used to hang out at all the time. So I woke up in this guy's bed. The 2 guys that I had been with went to make a run and didn't come back. Go figure. Like, oh, what? But they didn't come back. So this gentleman and I, we sat there and we talked, and we finished off whatever alcohol there was. For 4 days, I had done whatever I needed to do to get more. Whatever I needed to do to get more. And when I woke up in this guy's bed, he was asleep in his recliner. I was asleep on his bed. There was a roach crawling across my arm and a roach crawling across my leg. There was the floor looked like a stripper had walked through there. It was all sparkly and shiny, and there was broken bits of glass. There was burnt chore here. There was empty beer cans, empty liquor bottles, and when I say liquor, I'm talking about white top, like, because we weren't spending no more money on alcohol than we had to. So during this 4-day time, I had gone pretty much without eating. Maybe a bag of chips, candy bar, a couple of sodas, all the alcohol I could get my hands on. Had not slept a wink. Had not showered. Had not even changed clothes. Not even down to my crusty panties. And when I woke up and I looked around, I was like, not again. Not, how did I get here? What's going on? None of that. It was not again. And one of my favorite passages is on page 6 of the It Works, How and Why. And it says, many of us recall the moment of clarity when we came face to face with our disease. All the lies, all the pretenses, all the rationalizations we had used to justify where we stood as a result of our drug use stopped working. Who and what we were becomes more clear. We could no longer avoid the truth. And I had gone into this gentleman's bathroom to wash my face, and I looked up, and for a second I didn't even recognize myself. Like, I did not look like me or like what I should have looked like, even to myself. Like, that slow process that had happened through all the years, the curtain just fell, and all I saw was where I started and where I was. I couldn't say there was somebody worse. I couldn't say, well, at least I don't. I couldn't say any of those things anymore. Y'all, I tell you, that moment was absolutely life-changing. I can still feel what my hair felt like, my skin felt like. I can still, what I smelled like, what my mouth felt like. I can still remember all of that, just like it happened this morning, and I pray to God I never forget it. I pray I never forget it. But at that moment, I was so disgusted. Like, I literally felt sick to my stomach at myself. And I was like, you know what? I've tried to slow down before, and I can't get away from these people, and nothing ever works. Not trying to stop, not trying to get a better job, not trying to get a better place to live. None of this works. So you know what? If that's all there is, I'm done. And I honestly started thinking, who do I know that I can get enough pills to just go out and be done? And I swear there was a voice in my head, or only I could hear it, or I don't know, maybe everybody around could hear it. But it was just as calm and as warm. And it said, Kim, you don't want to die. You just don't want to live like this. And a light popped on, and I remembered the times that I had been in and out of recovery rooms, all of them, all the different ones. And I remember that time after time after time, there were always some of these same people in there, and they still had their kids, and they still had houses and cars, and maybe even had upgraded. And then there was people who were newer in there, and they were getting kids back, and they were getting cars and houses. But the main thing that I remember is that they smiled and they laughed. And it wasn't because they were doing it to get on somebody's good side. It wasn't because that's what the person in the room expected you to do. They did it because that was coming from inside of them. And I reached out for help that day. And, you know, I really started putting effort into not doing all of those things that had slid into my life. And then once I started not doing all those things that had slid into my life, I started trying to do the things I should have been doing, you know. And, you know, it's a process. It's a huge process, just like the process that addiction, you know, had. Recovery has a process too. Doesn't happen overnight, just like I didn't smoke my first joint and wake up a freaking homeless, jobless crack whore. That's just not the way it worked. So I did the work, and things started getting better on the outside. And then one day I noticed things were getting better on the inside. Like I really had fun with people. Like I really had gratitude. I mean, like real gratitude, where I took care of things that I had, not just, oh, I'm glad I have this. It's, you know, I took care of it because I was grateful to have it. I had clothes. I ended up with a whole lot of clothes, and I think that's because I walked around with a Walmart bag with everything I owned for a long time. But, you know, these things, you know, and they're still, you know, they're still happening. I'm still learning how to live principles. I'm still learning how to keep living a principle that, you know, it's an ongoing process. But that's okay, because I would rather keep putting effort into recovery to get in a better place, physically, mentally, spiritually, than to keep putting the effort into addiction and get in a worse place. Jails, institutions, and death, you know. I don't know exactly when it was in my recovery, but I had this aha moment where instead of saying, yeah, I don't want to use again because I don't want to have to live like that. I don't want to lose my kids. I don't want to, you know, go back. I don't want to. Just one day it came out of my mouth. I was like, I don't want to use again because I want to go. I want to see. I want to do. I want to be. I want to meet. You know, because my disease will tell me, oh, it wasn't that bad and you made it through. But my disease cannot tell me, I'm going to give you this. I'm going to let you go here. I'm going to make you feel like you've never felt. My disease can't give me the things that recovery can give me. And so I have another favorite passage, and this is from Living Clean, and it's page 1, and it says, this was my next moment of clarity, moment of recall from the time that I started recovery. And it says, the program of Narcotics Anonymous is the way we have found to escape lives of desperation and pain. But that's not all NA is. It's a path, a process, a way of life. Many of us come in with just the barest hope that we can get the pain to stop. In the beginning, our willingness is born of our suffering and fear. Living the program changes us in ways we might expect and in ways we never imagined. I thank you guys for your time. Have a beautiful convention.
Thank you, Kim. Going to introduce Matt S. I'm not sure where you're from.
Camden.
Camden, Tennessee. All right. Welcome, Matt S. from Camden, Tennessee.
All right. So my name is Matt. I'm a grateful recovering addict.
Hey, Matt.
So the moment of total recall. So for me, in our literature, it talks about being delusional is one of the most deadliest things for us. And throughout my life, I had a lot of lies and pretenses. Even since I was a kid, I had to make everything look good, even though it didn't feel good. So for me, I started getting locked up at an early age. I think the first time I got locked up was 7th grade, something like that, and that continued on through my life. I was in and out of the rooms a lot, always because there was a judge or something like that, never because I thought I needed it. When I actually did get to NA and felt a part of, right, I thought I was really doing things, right? I had a sponsor. I called that sponsor. I was working steps, right? And but I didn't do everything. He told me, he said, I want you to work step 1, but I want you to read through step 1 in the basic text and stop there. I said, okay. I told him I did, but I didn't. But I worked step 1, right? And I used that sponsor, and I learned a lot from him, because when I called him on a daily basis and told him about my day, it allowed him to point out the points where I was powerless, and it helped him to teach me what step 1 was about. Through that experience, I ended up with about 3.5 years clean. Had everything looking good, had the job, had the car, had the money, and all that stuff, right? And at that point, right, what got me into there was running from the law. And at that time, I had a tent in the desert. I thought I was upper class homeless because I had carpet and chairs and all that kind of stuff, right? But my life consisted of getting up at 3 a.m. and fighting with this girl to be the first in line at the methadone clinic, right? That was my everyday. I'd get me something to smoke, and I'd go lay out in the park and watch movies on my phone, and I thought I had it made. A guy came by one day and handed me $5. He was like, I hope it gets better. And I looked at him like, what is this? I don't need this. I didn't have no money. I had food stamps, right? But I had no money. I thought everything was great. I got to get high every day. I had, I had a place to go shower every day, wash my clothes. Life was great. So when I got into NA and started working, I thought, okay, that was the worst point of my life. That was the bottom, right? So going through NA and getting about 3.5 years clean, I started driving a truck, and I was a cross-country driver. And in that period of time, I had worked up, in 3 years, I had worked up to question 12 on step 4, right? And I got in that truck. I had my my workbook with me. I had my basic text, all that. I put it up on a shelf, and the whole time I drove, I never cracked it, never looked at it. In fact, in that time, where I come from in Nevada, felons were allowed to vote again. So all of a sudden, I cared about politics, right? And my sponsor one night told me, he's like, I have no view. That's an outside issue. And I told him, you're the problem with this country. So then I got my mom on my side. I was like, because she's older in the politics, So he said this. Can you believe that? Maybe you don't need to talk to him. Yeah, maybe I don't. I was in the middle of a relapse and didn't even know it. I just hadn't actually done anything yet. So a short time after that, I ended up relapsing. And now I'm running around in the country in a truck, getting high. And the thing was, right, the one delusion, the one thing that this happened, right, is I knew, going to meetings, having a sponsor, I knew that I had to talk about stuff, right? And the things I didn't talk about would damage me. So I had this thought in my head, right, because I had become socially acceptable. I looked good. Everything looked good, right? I had everybody believing everything was good. But I didn't talk about the fact that I believed that if I made enough money, that I could use successfully again, right? Because I had proven to myself at that point, I cannot use successfully. Well, the problem is I don't make enough money because I'm an addict and I don't work, I don't hold a job, I don't do anything, right? So I had I was driving a truck and I was making more money than I'd ever made. So my lowest point came with 3 bank accounts full of money, the nicest car I ever had, all the clothes I could want, anything and everything I could want, right? If I wanted something, I could get it, right? And I was more miserable than I'd ever been in my entire life because I had to save my face instead of my ass, and I couldn't call nobody and tell them I relapsed. My relationship that I had built up with my mother deteriorated. She kept asking me what was wrong. Nothing's wrong. I'm making Facebook posts, on Facebook, like I'm driving a truck, everything's great, this and that, right? But at night I would sit in that bunk and I would cry because I missed everybody in the meetings, like all this stuff, right? But I could not let it go, right? And Kim read out the how and why, right? But out of the basic text right here in step 1, it talks about so it says becoming employed, socially acceptable, and reunited with our families does not make our lives manageable. Social acceptability does not equal recovery. I thought I had recovery. Everything looked good on the outside, but on the inside it was horrible. I made more money, so I bought more dope. It didn't matter. I'd hit Las Vegas and I'd buy $4,000 worth of heroin, and it was still gone in 2 weeks. And I was sicker than I ever been. It didn't matter what I did, right? So, at the point, like it got to a point where I was tired of getting sick in that truck on the side of a road in a state I've never been in before, And I started getting a desire, right? Because I had thought before when I came to NA that I had a desire. I did. My desire was not to get locked up anymore, right? And unfortunately for me, that was not enough to keep me clean, right? So when I came face to face with my disease, it was like I said, with anything and everything I could want. More miserable than I'd ever been in. Nobody knew really what was going on. Isolated, alone on the road. I was able to put down heroin, right, but I couldn't stop smoking weed. And I would drive down these highways screaming at myself, put this shit out of the truck, get it out of the truck. You're going to lose everything you've worked for. You're going to lose your career. You've already lost your clean time. You've lost all this, right? Because at that point in time, clean time meant recovery, all this stuff meant recovery, right? And I couldn't do it. I could not do it. I'm hard-headed, and I learned the hard way, right? And the way that it came, when I came face-to-face with everything and I got honest, was I was on an exit ramp in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska. For miles around, there was nothing. And me and another truck parked on this ramp and ignoring the no parking sign. And that Sunday morning, I lit up some weed, and next thing you know, there was a knock on my door, and there was a highway patrol. And she was like, "You got to move." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm just trying to get by." She's like, No, come here. And she asked me, "You been smoking weed?" I said, Yeah, I have. She goes, "You got it in the truck?" "Yeah, I have." "Where's it at?" "It's right there in that bag. Right over there," right? And through a conversation with her, I didn't come out and tell her, I'm in recovery, I relapsed, I blew it, but she kind of understood that and took mercy on me, and she put me out of business for 24 hours, and made me drive down to this gas station and park out there. And in that moment, it was just like a relief, right? Like, I can't, once I start, I'm not going to set it down. Cops or something else are going to have to force me to set it down. And I called my mom, and I told her I relapsed. I called the guy I was driving for and told him what was going on. He knew I was smoking weed, but he didn't know other stuff. Told him what was going on. And in that moment, I was like, the only thing I needed to do was I got to drop this load off. I got to get out of this truck. I got to go back to home, and I got to find some meetings. Like that was the only thing, right? And but in that moment, right, reflecting on that, I realized that it was that time that gave me the gift of desperation and the true desire, like, I don't want this no more. It wasn't just, I don't want to get in trouble no more. It was like, I don't want to feel like this no more. Because I had moments driving down the interstate, you know, high out of my mind, like, I don't like the way I feel right now. I'm not in control of this truck. I'm not in control of myself, you know, and I did not like that at all. So it was in that moment that all the pretenses and all the lies, you know, all that, I came face to face with what it really was, that I'm an addict. And I'm always going to be an addict. And it doesn't matter how much money I have, how little money I have, what kind of home I have, what kind of car I have. If I make that decision to put any kind of substance in me that will create that change in my mind, I will be off and running again, you know. And the other thing is when that relapse came, I OD'd more than I ever did in my life. So I also am very aware that if it was to happen again, I would kill myself. Because I'm not going to stop. I'm just not going to stop. So since that time, I've gotten real busy in my recovery and actually have recovery and work steps and have a sponsor and work those steps, apply them in my life, learn what principles were, learned our traditions. You know, I really got involved. I've been of service. I'm grateful to the community for asking me to do this and allowing me to be of service, because for me, that's one of the big things that keep me clean, keep me coming back. You know, having sponsees and everything is a blessing too. And I'm really grateful for all that. You know, I'm grateful for NA. If it wasn't for NA, because I come from a religious family, I grew up in church. I grew up in all that stuff. And all I was told my whole life was like, you just need to work and go to church. Well, I've been doing that and I'm still higher than a kite, right? So NA changed my life. And you know, I don't have nothing against any of that stuff, that faith, you know, anything like that. I participate in certain things, you know, I don't have nothing against that, but I needed something more. You know, I needed something a lot more. I needed people that understood me and that could be like, hey, you know, this is what you need to do. You know, this is what you need to do. So, you know, that was, for me, I'm grateful for that. You know, I'm grateful for that moment. And I've tried to help I had one of my first sponsees followed right along. He's like, I'm going to go drive a truck. I was like, it's probably not a good idea, because you ain't done nothing. You ain't worked no steps. No. Well, you know, he's on Facebook. But he's still driving, but he's loaded. You know, and it's sad, but it's like, you know, I try to let you know, but people try to let me know. That's just how we are, you know. But I'm grateful that I made it back. I'm grateful that today I saved my face instead of my ass. I mean, my ass instead of my face, you know. And that's the thing. So my original clean date was 5/3/2018, and my revised updated date is 5/23/22. And after that, I'm just going to keep coming back. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Matt and Kim from Camden, Jackson, Tennessee area. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share on step one before we close out the meeting? Okay, thank you. Oh, now you want to speak. Come on, Jamal.
Jamal addict. Anything on first step? I mean, I don't really need that, but no, just for me, Jamal addict. On the first step for me, I had to get like, I had to get everything that would cause me to go out. I think that was a question asked to me. I don't remember where, but anything that would cause me to go back out, what would it be, was a question that came up during my first step. And it definitely helped me to set a solid foundation for my first step, right, for my recovery. And I literally had to dig up everything that I could, even down to had my children wrote a suicidal note and killed themselves type thing, like, or whatever, the worst thing that could happen. And I come up with nothing. There was nothing that would cause me to go back out. And I had to I took my time on my first step. It took me a year to do my first step. Because I've been out and come back, and been out and come back, and been out and come back. And it was something that I wasn't getting right. Obviously, my foundation wasn't solid enough. So I took my time doing my first step, and that was one of the biggest things that that I focused on was, if there was anything that would cause me to go back out, what would that be? All circumstances doing my first step, and hey, I come up with nothing. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks, Jamal.
Thanks, Jamal.
Hey, I'm Cody. I'm an addict.
Hey, Cody.
For the first step for me, it took me a long time to do it as well. But I had to get rid of all denial that I was an addict. I had to get rid of any kind of denial I had and get honest with myself and admit to myself that I had a problem. And the problem was not just my addiction, but it was me. My problem was me. And so, it took me a little while, and then I started, listening to other addicts and taking suggestions, and my life kind of started changing a little bit. So I started, actually working the questions on step one. And I remember the first question is, what does addiction mean to you? And addiction to me is something that would make me act out, make me, it's the idea of everything needs to be my way. That's what addiction is to me. So step one, I really had to build a foundation on that one, because if I would have zoomed through it, I wouldn't have had any kind of understanding that I'm actually an addict and there's no cure for my disease. And at first I thought, I was just a bad person. I was doing all these things because that's just who I was. And then it developed into more of, okay, it's a disease and here's the treatment for it. So I started getting into the Narcotics Anonymous literature and reading about my addiction and finding out what I can do to, keep it arrested and keep it at bay so it's not controlling my life. And that was, getting connected to a higher power.